Hey everybody, it's Yosh here from Pink Kirby Plays Games, and sorry about that off-screen thing right there. No, I haven't really uploaded a video in a while, and I felt like it was time to do such a thing. And I think I said that last time as well, but this time it really is time, because it's been a couple weeks, and 5,000 likes, and I'm planning on the page over, it's like 5,200 now, and I'm like, it's going really fast, but that's unrelated, because I do have something planned for that. I'm not sure if I can pull it off, but it's something I'm going to try to do, and I'll look into throughout the... It'll be on, like, Sunday, next Sunday. But anyway, what I was planning to do here is I want to do a little personal perspective thing on something that kind of irritates me about modern gaming, I suppose. And for me, it stems from childhood, but I'm always going to be a Nintendo fan over the other over like Microsoft and Sony for one reason. I think that reason is what I'm gonna talk about here because it truly is important to me. And for me, that reason is you look at Xbox or PlayStation and you see this massive just influx of shooters of all the random, there's so many different shooter types, and they're but when you actually like look at the game themselves, they're so similar, other than one mechanic differing from a different game, and then you realize they're essentially the same game, but they're selling like crazy because they're the same game. And the same can be said for Nintendo, but they do it on purpose. They actually try to innovate on a level that is different. It's not just releasing the same game with like new guns or a jetpack. It's actually like they use what they have and they just make it better by adding. They do add just one or two things, but they actually like make a complete game changer in a way that other games don't attempt to do. They basically have perfected what they have and put it on an entire new level that the others don't reach, in my opinion, because I think like when I look at Call of Duty or Halo or whatever, none of them really seem different to me. And like I mean it in the sense that Call of Duty is really just guns, and you get new guns, and then you just shoot people up, and then it's like there's story there, I guess. It's like the war stories, and those are entertaining, and I can admit that the stories can be good. But then there's like, and same with Halo, the stories can be good, but the gameplay doesn't really change that much, and it's to the point where it is actually odd because nothing. Then you look at any other game of that genre, and it's all just trying to copy the big names, and so you get like these small games that do have innovations, and they try to use that formula and change it, but the innovations that they make, the game isn't mainstream enough, so it doesn't really get anywhere. And so we're stuck with copycats. And that's why I appreciate a Nintendo game, because while there are copycats, there is a lot more innovation possible, or more innovation used and more mainstream when you think like Super Mario Galaxy or something, because that's really bad, but if you think like Super Mario Galaxy, they added like this whole new physics thing, and they made it different. It wasn't the same game that had been done before, but no like shooter, and if they try it, like if they try a gravity switching thing or something like that, it wouldn't go anywhere because it's just so, oh, that's new and different. And with Nintendo, it is new, but it's accepted because it's by characters that everyone's known and loves. And you can look at really any Nintendo titles that they all try to innovate. Like there's new Kirby games that always come out. There's Zeldas that change a little bit, and especially when it comes to Zelda, completely changing control schemes and stuff, it really affects games, and they use their basic mechanics to their fullest potential. But I don't know, and they focus a lot more on the game itself than like telling this epic story, which sure it helps. I mean, I love a good story in a game. Look at The Last of Us or Heavy Rain or something like those big budget graphical adventures. Um, Great games and good stories, but at this point, a lot of games are shifting towards that, where it's just you have to do the story and it's not so much the game. And gaming is meant to be a pastime that you're interacting with something, that you're trying to get a release from your own. Like you're getting a release from your own life. And when you're practically watching a movie, you're not really releasing yourself. You're kind of just absorbing yourself into this world, which is what it's supposed to do. But then you think like all this drama is going on, and then you're like, I don't want that. So, but when you're because you're not actually the character because they make their own characters, and but then you're playing like Mario and you can act as Mario because he doesn't really have a character, and you can kind of just realize you're like shuffling around, you're just playing, man. You're that's what it comes down to is you're playing a game over listening to a narrative. And not that I mind a story in a game at all. I think it does help in certain situations, but it at this point it's come down to so much like that's part of the game, that's supposed to be the major importance of the game. And I think in that sense, Nintendo deserves more respect because they care about games. They care about the actual gameplay more than I think some other developers do. Other developers try to do not the same mechanics because everything has to do that. Nothing really can be original anymore. Like, but other games, it's just so not exactly similar, but they're just so I don't know the word for it, but they just feel like the same adventure no matter what you're playing. And and I can admit the same can be said for Mario or whatever, obviously, because they've been the same for forever. But they just they feel cleaner. They feel more like an actual game, and that was the point of their creation. Is games aren't meant to be necessarily movies. They're not supposed to be overarching stories, although they can be. Like there are certain I enjoy Kingdom Hearts that has a really convoluted, confusing, unnecessarily confusing story, and then there's um as I mentioned, like story-based games, like or exclusively story-based games, like Heavy Rain. I don't know if I'd want to play them, but hell, why like watching them is entertaining enough for me. But then I kind of think that if I'm more interested on watching the game than actually playing it, is that a game or a movie? And to me, I think I want it to be a game, but it's not a game because it's just an interactive movie, which a lot of games have kind of shifted to. Like you shoot a couple guys and walk a while, and then you get a cutscene. And also a total bias here. And this whole video has been really biased, I'll admit. But um, just the way that shooters are becoming what they are, and I know it's been this way for 10 years since like they whenever. There's just a lack of originality. They're becoming a really stale concept, as platformers and stuff are, but they're there's a lack of anything else, and if anything else does come out, it kind of gets overshadowed, even if it's a better game, which is why I think um, I'm gonna say it a lot, but Nintendo is trustworthy because they always have this like refreshing difference that no other company really tries to do. And admittedly, there are platformers on Xbox or whatever, PS3. There's always those games, but the fact that I can't even think of one tells me how under the radar they were, and like that they were just kind of disappeared or faded. And if they did come out, it's like, yeah, no one cares really. So Because they're just like, hey, did you get the new whatever game you're talking about that comes out every single year, but we all need to have it because everyone loves them so much? And sure, they're good games. They have good stories and stuff to tell, but they're just, after a while, you just realize it's such a stale thing. And for me, like a basic, for me, maybe exclusive, maybe some other people agree with me. I'd rather play like a jumping game like Mario or Kirby or Sonic or whatever, and I'd rather play those games where it becomes more precise and more skill based over time than I would basically playing arena fights over and over and over, like a Call of Duty game where you kind of just go like behind this thing and shoot them, and then you run over there and there's more enemies. Every game kind of feels identical aside from a storytelling point, and very few games achieve a level of like where they do that correctly and they actually don't just make it feel like arena after arena. And sure, I don't really, since I don't follow them too much, I can't really think of a particular game that does that well. But I think it, games like The Last of Us or something like that show that it is a possibility to make games where it is kind of just arena fights, but they make it flow so delicately and then switch it to this thing, and that game has a good story. That's a very good example of what could be done, but what isn't done. And to me, like, what a game should be is a game. It's a pastime. It's meant to not exactly waste your time, but kind of put yourself into this. It is kind of meant to be an escape from reality in the first place. So when you get like a frustrating game, or like not a frustrating game, but like something that's just boom, 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 I don't see how that's a release to life when it's not really a game. It's kind of gritty. But then you get like I'm saying Nintendo games a lot, but it's the truth because they're meant to be exclusively a gaming experience where you're jumping from one place to the other, and there's the only stress is, oh, am I going to hit that block? And if I do, I have lives or whatever to come back. So it's not super stressful. And if it is, it's because you're doing self-imposed challenges like rankings or whatever, which sure the other games have, but at the point it's just like they don't move as quickly and they don't flow. To me, they don't flow as smoothly when you look at a game like you know what I'm talking about. I've said all the names so much, but and I know I'm only using like 3 names, so I'm not super knowledgeable in that aspect because as I'm saying, this is a biased video, but hell, at least I can admit that because people that think shooters are the best and they really truly aren't because there's so many of them, and then they make another one, and then they make another one, much like back in the day when it was the NES era or whatever, where they made a ton of platformers, or the middle road where they tried to mix the two or something, which they did with like Ratchet and Clank, or Jack and Daxter really failed at that. They tried to mix like third-person shooters are iffy, and like Metal Gear is probably the only good one like that I can think of, and Ratchet and Clank, but the Jack and Daxter games sucked, I think. Other than the first one, the first Jack and Daxter was good before they added it. Anyway, that's completely unrelated, but basically the point of this video is to say I think Nintendo deserves more credit than they get, and because they're innovating on basic gaming concepts and turning them into something phenomenal that other companies just either don't achieve or don't try to achieve. So you're stuck in this loop of, huh, huh, and it's stale. And at this point, I think platformers are refreshing, or a Nintendo game, or even an adventure game, or like a good puzzle game is kind of a rarity nowadays. And if you find it, it's like, oh, you play it for a couple hours, and it's like, ugh. But it's still refreshing to have that on the onslaught of things. of shooters and stuff, but then you get, it just feels, it just is like a rarity, as I'm saying. It doesn't happen as often as you'd like. And to me, that's not how gaming should be. I think it should go back to just gaming, not so much going here, bam, going here, bam, or even like jump, bam. It should just go back to what's fun. And I know shooters can be fun, but to me, they're not. And to me, I think Nintendo is good, and they're actually trying to enhance things instead of just throwing the same thing at us. Even though they are throwing the same thing at us, it's an enhanced same thing. So to me, that's the way to go. This is Yosh from Pink Herbie, and I'd say that was whatever it was. I was just ranting. So see y'all next time.